Tonight we step into a world on the edge of something immense, something that will echo across centuries, though no one yet knows it. You are standing in a chilly French field, the winter of 1095, still clinging to the air. Around you, peasants shuffle close to each other, cloaks drawn tight as the sound of bells drifts through the fog. The smell of wood smoke clings to the morning, and the ground crunches beneath your feet. At the center, a wooden platform rises above the crowd, and upon it stands Pope Urban II, his voice carrying like a wind over dry grass. He speaks of a distant land where Christ once walked, now under the control of infidels. He speaks of sins washed away, of eternal glory, of a chance to do something that will matter. The crowd trembles. Some cry, some shout, Deus vult, God wills it. You can almost feel history shifting under your boots. Before we begin, if this little corner of calm has brought you any comfort, feel free to like the video and subscribe only if it feels genuine to you. No pressure. I'd also love to hear from you. Just drop a comment with where you're listening from and what time it is. It's always special to know we're all quietly gathered here from different corners of the world, like a family, scattered but still connected. All right, now go ahead and dim the lights. Maybe turn on a fan or a soft hum in the background, something that feels like home. Nestle in, get cozy, and let's ease into tonight's story together. Urban's speech is more than words. It is a spark on dry tinder. He promises indulgences, forgiveness of sins, and the eternal reward of heaven for those who take up the cross. For knights, this means a way to turn years of bloody feuding into something holy. For peasants, it's a way out of a life that feels as narrow as the fields they plough. Some historians debate whether his speech was as fiery as later chroniclers describe. Was it really the electric moment, they say, or did the legend grow in the retelling? You shrug. Legends have a way of swelling to fit the hopes of those who tell them. You wander through the crowd listening to whispered plans. Old men lean on staves, murmuring that perhaps their sins might finally be forgiven. Young boys' faces flushed with excitement imagine themselves heroes in shining armor, though most own only patched tunics. A woman clutches her child, wondering whether the road east is safer than the hunger she knows here. Urban's words ripple through them all, settling deep. You hear talk of Jerusalem, a place most have never seen nor could find on a map. Yet it becomes suddenly closer than their neighbor's fence. The preaching spreads like a windstorm carried by monks and wandering clergy. News travels slowly in these days, yet somehow everyone seems to know. Villages buzz with rumors the Turks have taken holy lands, pilgrims suffer, churches are burned. You cannot tell which stories are true, which are exaggerated to stoke the flames. What you do know is that the air feels charged, as if Europe itself is leaning eastward, restless and hungry for something beyond its borders. As night falls, fires dot the fields and the sky above is scattered with stars. You sit by one, feeling the warmth on your face while frost nips at your back. Around you, people dream aloud of miracles of a road lined with angels of gold waiting in Jerusalem. You almost want to believe them, though you know the road will be far less kind. Somewhere in the shadows, a few skeptics mutter that marching thousands of miles to fight seasoned warriors is madness. Their voices are drowned by the chorus of Deus vult. You drift between the flames and the stars, wondering if this is how great tides begin, not with a roar, but with whispers in the night, spreading from one heart to the next, until an ocean moves. You wake to the sound of bells again, but this time they are not church bells. They are the clamor of people gathering footsteps on frozen ground and the low hum of voices rising in anticipation. The name on everyone's lips is Peter the Hermit, a figure as strange as he is magnetic. You see him for the first time on a rough wooden cart, wrapped in a coarse robe, his feet bare despite the cold. His beard is wild, his eyes burn with an intensity that makes you shift uncomfortably, and yet you cannot look away. He speaks not like a noble priest delivering polished sermons, but like a man who has walked through fire and returned with a story to tell. He claims to have visited the Holy Sepulchre itself, to have seen the suffering of Christians in the East. Whether this is truth or the embroidery of a wandering preacher, historians still argue, but it doesn't matter to the crowd. They believe. You believe. Peter tells them God has chosen even the lowliest peasant to march and reclaim Jerusalem. He doesn't speak to the lords, he speaks to you, the ploughman, the shepherd, the washerwoman, standing in the back. You feel a thrill rise in your chest. Maybe, just maybe, you are part of something divine. His words are fiery yet soothing, a strange lullaby that promises adventure and salvation. As he raises a crude wooden cross above his head, the crowd surges forward to touch it, to weep against it, to swear their loyalty. People rip scraps of cloth, tying them to their sleeves or cloaks as makeshift crosses. The first taking of the cross begins not with shining armor, but with ragged fabric and raw faith. That night, the village taverns and huts overflow with chatter. Some sell what little they own, oxen tools, even the land they till, believing they will not need them when they return victorious, or that they will not return at all. Mothers hush their children with tales of angels guiding the road to Jerusalem. You sit at the edge of the firelight watching Peter quietly pray, his face lined with exhaustion. He is no knight, no noble, just a hermit with a donkey and a voice that has somehow roused thousands. As spring warms the earth, the movement swells. Bands of eager followers trail behind him like streams joining a river. They are not organized. There are no strict ranks, only a shared dream, and a few self-proclaimed leaders barking orders. Villages' empty roads fill, and the countryside watches in awe and in fear. Farmers see their granaries raided by passing zealots who believe they are owed bread for their holy mission. Kings and bishops wring their hands, torn between blessing and controlling this flood of humanity. You walk among them, hearing every kind of voice, the brash young man boasting of slaying Turks, the widow whispering prayers for her lost husband, the priest chanting psalms. It feels less like an army and more like a restless pilgrimage. Along the way, Peter's donkey, yes, even the donkey becomes a legend, trudges faithfully, as if it too knows it carries a destiny. Some laugh at the sight, others say it's a sign of God's favor, that such a humble beast leads the way. There are moments when doubts creep in. Supplies run thin, tempers flare, and skirmishes break out with locals unprepared to host this ragtag tide. You see Peter again, calming disputes, preaching to weary hearts, urging them onward. His words are like bread, simple, sustaining, and quickly devoured. One evening, as the sun bleeds orange over the horizon, you hear an old soldier mutter that this is folly, that without knights and discipline, they will be sheep led to slaughter. You glance at Peter, who stands silhouetted against the sunset, and wonder if the soldier is right. But then the crowd bursts into song, and for a moment their voices rise so pure and strong that you almost believe they could move mountains, or at least walk across them. You drift to sleep under the open sky, the grass cool beneath you, the stars like tiny watchfires above. The journey has begun, and there is no turning back. The days stretch into weeks, and you find yourself swallowed by a river of humanity that only grows wider as it moves. Everywhere you look, there are faces, sunburned, tired, hopeful faces of peasants who have never walked more than a few miles from their homes, now trudging toward lands they cannot imagine. The crowd is not just men with crude weapons. It is women carrying infants, children clutching wooden crosses, old men hobbling with canes. There are even a few petty nobles among them, their rusty mail shining faintly in the sun, mixed in with beggars who own nothing but the rags on their backs. They call themselves an army, but it is more a moving village, a caravan of dreams, stitched together by faith and desperation. You weave through clusters of travelers and overhear the strange hum of conversations. Some speak of miracles, how a blind man regained his sight after praying on the road, or how bread appeared mysteriously in a village that had none. Others whisper darker rumors of those who wander off and vanish, of thieves waiting in forests, of demons lurking in the night. Historians still argue whether these stories are embellishments of later chroniclers or born of frightened imaginations, but to you walking under the wide, unpredictable sky they feel alive. As the crowd rolls forward, the ground wears away beneath countless feet. Roads turn to dust clouds and fields near villages are trampled flat by the surge. Local peasants watch from their doors torn between awe and dread. Some welcome the Crusaders with bread and blessings convinced they serve God's cause. Others slam their shutters and hide their stores, knowing that hungry mouths quickly forget piety. When food runs low, some of the travelers take by force what is not given, and you watch as tempers flare. A barn is raided here, a granary emptied there. The movement that began with prayers now leaves small scars along its path. Among the sea of faces, small leaders rise and fall. There is Walter, sans avoir, Walter the penniless, a minor knight who rallies a band of followers. He walks with a certain grim determination, his rusty sword clinking at his side. Though poor, his presence draws those who crave someone who looks like a soldier, someone who might actually know what they're doing. Around him, little groups form clusters of men with crude spears, women who have formed circles to care for children, priests chanting as they march. The army takes shape, but it is a shape more like a cloud than a spear, formless, shifting without clear edges. The days on the road are long. The sun beats down, turning the air thick and sticky, and the nights bite with cold. You find yourself drifting between exhaustion and awe. Sometimes the landscape opens into rolling hills where the grass waves like an ocean, and you forget the weight of your pack for a while. Other times the road twists into narrow passes where shadows seem to clutch at your ankles. Jokes spring up to lighten the mood. Someone quips that if this is the road to heaven, it certainly smells like the road to hell, given how unwashed everyone is. You laugh not because it's funny, but because laughter keeps the darkness at bay. The journey leaves marks. Blisters bloom on feet, cloaks tear, and once proud boots fall apart until feet are wrapped in scraps of cloth. Hunger gnaws at bellies. You see mothers chewing weeds to trick their stomachs, children licking crumbs from their hands. Still the crowd trudges on, bound together by a belief that Jerusalem waits at the end like a shining prize. Even when someone collapses by the roadside, gasping their last, the line continues, stepping around the body with murmured prayers. There is no time to stop. There is only forward. By the time you cross into lands where the language shifts and the churches look different, the crowd feels less like villagers on an adventure and more like a single living creature, restless, hungry, stubborn. You glance at Peter the Hermit riding ahead on his donkey, his back stooped, but his voice still strong when he preaches at night. The people hang on his words, desperate for meaning as the road stretches endlessly ahead. You too cling to his voice, for without it the night would be unbearably silent. One evening, as the sky burns with a crimson sunset, you realize how far from home you are. The familiar fields of France are only a memory now, and the road ahead seems both terrifying and irresistible. The air smells different, the stars seem sharper, and the thought creeps into your mind, perhaps this is not just a journey to Jerusalem, but to some unknown part of yourself. You wrap yourself in your cloak, feeling the day's dust clinging to your skin, and let sleep take you while the march continues into the darkness. You rise before dawn to the faint sound of psalms blending with the creak of wooden wheels, the lowing of oxen, and the shuffle of thousands of feet on packed dirt. The road ahead leads deeper into German lands, and though the sky is still bruised, with the fading stars the crowd already moves a slow and endless tide. The Rhine glitters like a silver ribbon as you march alongside it, the air smelling faintly of river mist and damp earth. Villages dot the horizon, their steeples poking upward like fingers pointing to heaven. And at each stop, the Crusaders grow louder, bolder, more convinced of their divine mission. At first, the journey through Germany feels almost celebratory. Locals greet the travelers with bread and blessings as though sharing in the glory of this holy cause. Bells ring in some towns as the Crusaders pass, and priests step forward to offer their prayers. You see children run alongside the road, laughing, tossing flowers to the pilgrims. For a brief moment, it seems as though the entire continent is marching together. You almost believe that the dream of Jerusalem could carry them without trouble. But beneath the hymns and prayers, tensions simmer. Supplies quickly dwindle and some villages cannot feed the endless stream of hungry mouths. Arguments break out when food is demanded rather than offered, and the air grows heavy with suspicion. In some towns, shutters slam shut before the Crusaders arrive. Dogs bark and farmers clutch pitchforks, wary of what this unruly mass might do. You hear muttered complaints. These so-called soldiers of God eat like wolves. Soon enough, fights break out over bread, over a goat, even over a single barrel of ale. You notice the leaders struggling to keep order. Peter's voice rises more often now, preaching patience and faith, urging the crowd to accept hardship without violence. Yet his words sometimes fall into the dust unheard. Walter the Penniless tries to drill his men into some semblance of order, but they are still more mob than army. Historians still argue whether these leaders had any real control, or whether the People's Crusade was a wildfire that no one could contain. As you watch a fight break out over a stolen loaf, you suspect the latter. Not all the encounters are grim. In some towns, hospitality flows freely. Monasteries open their doors, offering bread soup and a place to rest. You remember one evening where a kind abbot lets you sleep in a barn, the hay soft beneath you, and the scent of incense drifting from the chapel. Under the flicker of candles, you hear monks chanting, and for a moment, the chaos outside fades. That night, hope feels almost tangible, like something you could hold in your hands. Still the road hardens everyone. Blisters split open feet, swell tempers shorten. You hear more grumbling, now jokes laced with bitterness. Someone calls Peter's donkey the only one who knows where we're going, and laughter ripples through the camp. It's a joke, but the uncertainty gnaws at you. Does anyone really know what lies ahead? The Rhine itself becomes a companion flowing beside you as you march through cities like Cologne, where thousands more join the movement. The crowd swells so large it feels endless. The sound of so many voices chanting Deus Vult rolls like thunder through the valleys. You feel the weight of history pressing closer, as though the world holds its breath, watching this strange pilgrimage. Then whispers begin to spread rumors of attacks against Jewish communities in towns along the Rhine. You overhear them first in hushed tones, then louder as the days pass. Some crusaders, inflamed by zeal and superstition, begin to view local Jews as enemies of Christ, blaming them for everything from Christ's crucifixion to the shortage of food. You see bands break off, heading toward Jewish quarters with anger in their eyes. Your stomach knots, sensing that something dark is unfolding. For now, the main host pushes forward, but the shadows of these acts follow behind like ghosts. You cannot shake the feeling that faith so bright at the start is beginning to flicker with something far more dangerous. As night falls, you walk alone for a while, the moonlight turning the road pale silver. Around you, thousands sleep in scattered clusters, fires glowing like stars fallen to earth. You lie down among them, listening to the crackle of flames and the distant murmur of the river. Above, the sky seems endless, but so does the road ahead. You close your eyes, wondering what storms await beyond the Rhine. Morning comes heavy and grey, with mist curling around the riverbanks like restless spirits. You rise slowly, the chill biting at your fingers, and join the march as it winds into the heart of the Rhineland. At first, you hope the rumors were just campfire whispers exaggerated by fear and boredom. But soon you see smoke rising in the distance, not from cooking fires, but from burning homes. You hurry forward and find chaos spilling through narrow streets. Crusaders, drunk on their own righteousness, storm Jewish quarters, tearing down doors, dragging terrified families into the open. You hear shouts, twisted with scripture cries for mercy, the crash of splintered wood. You freeze, unable to move, as the violence unfurls before you like a nightmare. Some Jews flee to the safety of bishops' castles, others cling to their synagogues, barricading themselves inside. Many take desperate refuge in the churches, only to find even holy ground offers no sanctuary. You see mothers shielding children, old men clutching scrolls, their faces pale with disbelief that neighbors who once traded with them now come bearing torches. The air fills with the sharp scent of smoke, the iron tang of fear, and the bitter sound of prayers drowned by screams. Historians still argue whether these massacres were planned or the product of mob fury spiraling out of control, but in this moment, labels mean nothing. You see only the raw cruelty of human hands, convinced they serve God. The Crusaders call their victims Christ killers, ignoring the teachings of the very Christ they claim to follow. Some bishops plead for restraint, shielding as many as they can within their walls, but they cannot protect everyone. Bodies soon litter the cobblestones, silent accusations against a faith twisted into a weapon. The massacre spreads from town to town. Speyer Worms Mainz. In Mainz, the violence reaches its terrible peak. You watch as entire families choose death at their own hands, rather than face the swords of their attackers. Mothers cradle children. One last time, fathers clutch daggers with trembling resolve, and prayers rise like smoke into the indifferent sky. The Crusaders emerge from the carnage, shouting victory, blind to the horror they have wrought. You turn away, heart heavy, stomach churning, because this is not what you imagined when you heard the call to take up the cross. Night falls and the fires burn long after the screams fade. You sit apart from the others, staring at the dark river that reflects the flames like veins of blood. The stars seem colder tonight, distant and silent. Around you, some Crusaders laugh, boasting of their deeds as though they have won a battle. Others sit quietly, haunted by what they have seen, whispering confessions into their hands. You wonder which group you belong to, and the thought unsettles you. Despite the horrors, the march continues as relentless as the tide. The bodies left behind become just another shadow in the long trail of suffering. You walk on, but the smell of smoke and the cries of the victims cling to your cloak like a curse. Every step feels heavier, as though the earth itself resents carrying this weight. In the days that follow, the crowd swells yet again. New followers join, some unaware of the atrocities, others indifferent. The massacres fade into rumor, distorted by those who want to forget. Yet you cannot forget. The images follow you in your dreams, burning houses, falling prayers, eyes filled with terror. You wake, sweating, whispering apologies to the night, knowing they will never be heard. One evening, Peter preaches by the light of a great fire, his voice rising over the restless crowd. He speaks of endurance, of God's will, of Jerusalem shining on the horizon. He says nothing of the massacres, perhaps fearing it would break the fragile unity of the host. But you see the way his hands tremble, the way his eyes dart toward the flames. He knows, just as you do, that something in the soul of this movement has changed. As you lie down under the stars, the night feels colder than ever. The road ahead stretches long and dark, and you can't help but wonder if the sins committed here will stain every step that follows. The Crusaders sing themselves to sleep, their voices soft and eerie in the mist, but you hear something else beneath the melody, a whisper of warning carried by the wind. The mist clears as you march southward, leaving the bloodied Rhineland behind, though its memories cling like a shadow you cannot shake. The road bends toward Hungary now, and the land itself seems to shift. The air smells different, fresher, with pine and wildflowers, and the fields stretch wide under a sky so blue it almost feels forgiving. Villages dot the hillsides, their thatched roofs glowing in the sun, and for a brief moment the march regains some of its early hope. The people sing again, voices rising with the morning mist, hymns blending with the distant calls of birds. But the Hungarian King Clermont watches this mass with wary eyes. News of the chaos in the Rhineland has travelled faster than your feet. He knows this so-called army is more a tide than a disciplined force, and tides can flood as easily as they flow. At first, his soldiers escort you along the roads, guiding the pilgrims through their towns. Food is sold, markets bustle, and a fragile peace holds. For several days it almost feels like the crusade is back on its holy path. You see smiling merchants handing out bread, children waving, and priests blessing the crowd. Yet hunger is a persistent thief. Supplies run thin again, and some among the host grow restless, demanding food without payment. When it isn't given freely, they take it. You watch as a farmer's cart is overturned, his protests drowned out by the cries of the mob. The Hungarian soldiers tighten their grips on their spears, their eyes narrowing. That night, campfires burn under a tense sky, and you hear the rumors the king is considering shutting his gates to the crusaders. Some whisper of ambushes waiting ahead. Historians still argue whether Clermont's later actions were justified defense or harsh reprisal. But you, walking among the restless throng, can feel the storm brewing. The next morning, a fight breaks out near a small village. It starts with a loaf of bread and ends with blood on the grass. The Hungarian guards retaliate swiftly, their arrows whistling through the air, scattering the would-be thieves. You duck low as the chaos swirls around you, the shouts of fear and anger blending into a single roar. Peter tries to calm the crowd, his voice hoarse from shouting prayers, but the mob is beyond reason. For a moment it feels as though the entire march will dissolve into slaughter. Then, as suddenly as it began, the violence sputters out, leaving behind bodies and silence. After this, the Hungarian escort becomes less friendly, their hands always near their swords. Bridges are watched, villages guarded, and the crowd is pushed forward like unwanted guests. You feel their hostility prickling at your skin, a constant reminder that the road east is not lined with roses. When the army finally exits Hungary, you exhale a breath you didn't know you were holding. Behind you lies tension. Ahead waits something even harsher. The Balkans rise like jagged teeth on the horizon, forests thick with shadows, mountains that cut the sky, and narrow paths where the earth itself seems to close around you. Villagers here are wary, their faces hard, their language unfamiliar. The Crusaders stumble through the rocky roads, their boots wearing thin, their carts breaking on the rough terrain. Hunger gnaws deeper. You see people boiling weeds, chewing on leather straps, anything to trick their stomachs. The jokes are fewer now, the songs quieter, replaced by muttered prayers and hollow eyes. At night, the forests come alive with strange sounds, wolves howling in the distance, branches snapping under unseen feet. You keep your cloak tight and your knife closer, feeling the weight of every rustle in the dark. Some travelers vanish, swallowed by the night or by the hands of bandits lurking in the trees. You hear of ambushes where carts are overturned, goods stolen, and stragglers killed. The road east is not merciful, yet amid the hardship, small kindnesses bloom. A villager offers you a bowl of broth, thin but warm, and you almost weep with gratitude. A stranger mends a tear in your cloak, and you share a crust of bread in return. These moments flicker like candle flames in the long, dark, fragile, but enough to keep you moving. By the time you reach the edge of Byzantine lands, your clothes are tattered, your shoes worn to threads, but the sight of Constantinople's distant walls sends a ripple of awe through the host. The city glitters under the sun like something out of a dream dome's shining towers rising high. The crowd gasps, some falling to their knees in prayer. You feel it too, a surge of wonder, as if the journey has finally led to a place where hope can rest, if only for a while. You stand on a hill as dusk settles, watching the lights of Constantinople twinkle like stars scattered across the earth. The road has been long, cruel and strange, but the city ahead promises safety, or at least the illusion of it. You let the sight soothe you as you lie down under the stars, though deep down you know this peace will not last. You awaken to the sight of Constantinople rising like a jewel above the Bosporus, its walls stretching for miles, its domes catching the early sun, as if they had captured pieces of the sky itself. After so many nights under the stars, this city looks unreal, its gates guarded by armored soldiers, its markets spilling with colors, its harbors bristling with ships. You have heard stories of this place, the last great bastion of the Roman Empire, though everyone now calls it Byzantine. It smells of spices and salt of bread baking and incense burning. For a brief moment you forget your hunger, simply staring, because this is no muddy village or burned-out town. This is the heart of an empire. But the welcome is colder than the sea breeze. Emperor Alexios III Komnenos is no fool. He has heard of the massacres in the Rhineland, the skirmishes in Hungary, the looting in the Balkans. To him, this massive crowd of peasants, women, children, and a few unruly knights is less an army and more a problem, an unpredictable horde camped outside his walls. He knows they march for Jerusalem, but he also knows they could just as easily turn on his city if provoked. You hear the city guards bark orders, their hands never far from their swords, and you realize you are not guests here. You are tolerated because the emperor has no choice. Inside the camp, tempers flare. The Crusaders grumble that the emperor withholds supplies, that the Byzantines treat them like beggars rather than soldiers of God. You walk among them and hear the insults hissed under breath, Greek traitors, cowards hiding behind walls. The Byzantines in turn mutter that these Westerners are filthy, undisciplined and dangerous. Historians still debate whether Alexios had a master plan for handling this horde or was simply improvising, but you can feel the tension stretching like a bowstring. Despite the mistrust, the emperor sends food and ferries across the Bosporus. His strategy is clear: move this mob out of his city as quickly as possible and let them march east, away from his walls. As supplies arrive, you watch the people cheer, tearing into bread as if it were manna from heaven. For a moment, the bitterness fades. Children laugh with crumbs on their faces, women hum while stirring thin soups, men toast each other with watered wine. The city behind you glitters, but you know you are only borrowing its light. When you finally enter Constantinople under strict guard, the streets dazzle your senses. Merchants shout from stalls overflowing with silk, spices and jewels. Church bells toll above grand domes, their echoes mingling with the calls of seagulls. You pass mosaics that shimmer with gold icons that seem to watch you as you walk. Some of the Crusaders gape openly, their mouths hanging like doors left ajar. Others sneer, muttering that the Byzantines have grown soft, drowning in luxury, while Christians suffer in the Holy Land. You feel both awe and unease. The city is beautiful, but it is not yours. At night, you hear Peter preaching again, his voice echoing through the camp. He warns against pride, against greed, urging the people to stay focused on their mission. Yet even he seems weary, his words softer than before, as though the city's splendor has drained something from him. You catch sight of him kneeling in prayer by the light of a single candle, the donkey lying beside him like an old friend. You wonder what he asks God for in that moment: strength, forgiveness, or maybe just clarity. The next day, Alexios meets with the leaders of the host. You are too far to hear the words, but whispers fly through the crowd. He demands oaths of loyalty, promises of returned lands, and obedience to Byzantine command. Some leaders agree, grudgingly, others bristle. But in the end, the horde is ferried across the narrow strait, away from the city's shining walls. The soldiers watch with cold eyes as you depart, and you can almost hear the gates sigh in relief as they close behind you. Standing on the far shore, you turn back one last time. Constantinople gleams in the distance, its domes catching the sun, its towers rising like fingers pointing heavenward. The sight is both comforting and unsettling, as if the city itself knows something you do not. The road ahead stretches into Anatolia, a land of mountains and dust, of dangers whispered about in hushed tones. You take a deep breath, the salty wind filling your lungs, and step forward. Night falls as you march into the unknown, the lights of the city fading into the dark sea behind you. You wrap your cloak tighter, feeling the chill creep in, and listen to the murmurs of those around you. Some pray, others boast, a few cry softly. The stars above are sharp and cold, and you wonder how many of them will still be shining by the time you reach Jerusalem, if you ever do. The first steps into Anatolia feel like stepping onto another planet. The air is dry, the sky a relentless blue that seems to mock your thirst, and the earth underfoot shifts from soft grass to hard, sun-baked dust. Gone are the rolling fields of Europe. Here, the land rises in jagged ridges and sharp valleys with only sparse shrubs to break the emptiness. You walk with your cloak drawn tight around your face to block the sun, but the heat seeps through anyway, making every step feel heavier than the last. Around you, the Crusaders grumble, sweat streaking their dirt-caked faces, their songs replaced by strained silence. The march grows more desperate with each passing day. Supplies dwindle faster than expected, and the land offers little to replace them. Streams run dry, fields are barren, and the few villages you encounter are wary, their doors barred, their wells guarded. When food does appear, it's barely enough to keep the weakest from collapsing. You watch a child chew on a strip of leather, eyes glazed, and you swallow hard-tasting guilt with every bite of your own crust of bread. Peter tries to keep spirits high, preaching under the sparse shade of trees, urging everyone to trust in God's providence. Yet even his voice cracks sometimes, as if the heat has stolen not only his breath, but also his certainty. You see the donkey still trudging alongside him, ribs showing, but somehow it keeps moving. The animal becomes a strange symbol of endurance. You think to yourself that if the donkey can survive this, maybe you can too. Historians still debate how much of the march's suffering was due to poor planning versus sheer bad luck. But as the sun scorches your back, the distinction feels pointless. Along the road, discipline frays. The host splits into factions, each accusing the others of hoarding or stealing. Fights break out over scraps of food, and trust withers faster than the dying grass. You pass a man lying by the road, too weak to rise, his lips cracked and eyes pleading. Some offer him water, others step over him, afraid to spare even a drop. You look back only once because the sight sticks like a thorn in your chest. The land itself seems to conspire against you. The rocky paths twist unexpectedly, and more than once the Crusaders get lost, circling hills that all look the same. Bandits lurk in the shadows, waiting for stragglers. At night, the mountains echo with the howl of wolves, sending shivers through the camp despite the heat. You keep your knife close, though you suspect it would do little against either beast or man. Sleep is shallow, haunted by dreams of water and home. Then come the first skirmishes with the Seljuk Turks. Arrows whistle out of nowhere, striking the dirt near your feet. Panic ripples through the crowd as riders appear on the ridges, their silhouettes black against the burning sky. They strike like shadows, fast and deadly, vanishing before anyone can muster a defense. You see men fall, clutching their chests, hear the screams of women, scattering the cries of children, drowned by the pounding of hooves. The Crusaders huddle together, shields raised, but their fear is palpable. These are not the disorganized raids of bandits. These are skilled warriors testing their prey. In the aftermath, you gather with the others around hastily lit fires, eyes darting at every shadow. The wounded groan softly, the smell of blood mingling with the acrid scent of smoke. Someone mutters that God has abandoned them. Another snaps that faith is all they have left. You sit quietly watching sparks rise into the dark sky and wonder if they are prayers drifting upward or just ashes blown by the wind. Despite the terror, the march continues. Step by step, mile by mile, the host pushes deeper into Anatolia, driven less by hope now and more by the simple refusal to stop. You cling to small moments of beauty, a rare breeze cooling your face, the sight of stars so bright they seem close enough to touch the sound of distant bells when a lone church appears like an oasis. These tiny things keep you from falling into despair. Yet you can feel it building, the exhaustion, the hunger, the fear. It gathers like storm clouds over the camp, heavy and waiting to break. The Seljuks are watching, you know it, circling like wolves. The road ahead leads into their territory, and every bone in your body whispers that something terrible is coming. As night falls on another endless day, you lie on the hard ground staring at the stars. They burn so fiercely in the dark sky, indifferent to your suffering. You close your eyes, clutching your cloak tighter, and pray not for victory, not even for Jerusalem, but simply to see another dawn. Dawn breaks pale and brittle, the horizon glowing faintly as though the sun itself is hesitant to rise on what's about to come. You are marching with the rest when the word spreads like a tremor through the crowd. A fortified place called Civetot lies ahead, promised as a safe haven, a base to rest and regroup before pressing on. The thought of safety is intoxicating and spirits flicker to life. People talk of warm meals, of strong walls, of a chance to breathe. Yet somewhere deep down, a knot of unease tightens in your stomach. Safety, you have learned, is often a mirage. Peter the Hermit is absent. Rumor has it he has gone ahead to negotiate, or perhaps back to Constantinople seeking aid. The details blur in the hot wind, and without him the host feels like a flock without its shepherd. Small leaders argue, voices sharp, about whether to wait or advance. Some insist on pushing forward to scout the Seljuk forces, others urge caution. In the end, the bold win out. A large portion of the army marches ahead, leaving behind only a scattering of campfires and the uneasiest of watchers. The path to Civetot winds through wooded hills, quiet enough that even the birds seem to hold their breath. You tread carefully, boots crunching over dry leaves, heart thudding in your chest. The air feels thick as though it carries whispers you cannot quite hear. Then without warning, the silence shatters. Arrows hiss from the trees, slicing through the air before you can even see the attackers. Men scream, clutching at wounds, collapsing into the dust. The Seljuks burst from the shadows like a storm, their horses thundering down the slopes, their battle cries sharp as the blades they wield. Panic erupts. The Crusaders break ranks instantly. There is no real formation to hold. Spears drop, shields scatter, and the air fills with chaos, the clash of metal, the shrieks of the dying, the drumbeat of hooves pounding the earth. Reaching the camp, you think maybe the walls of Civetot will save you. But there are no walls, no salvation, only more confusion, as the rest of the host realizes the enemy is at their heels. Women clutch children, men swing whatever weapons they have, and the Seljuks show no mercy. Fires erupt, tents collapse, screams rise and fall like waves crashing against rocks. The smell of smoke and blood mingles until you cannot tell them apart. Historians still argue about the numbers, how many died that day, how many escaped, but to you counting feels obscene. The fields are littered with bodies, a carpet of the fallen, stretching under the merciless sun. The Seljuks chase down stragglers, leaving only silence in their wake. You hide under the body of a fallen man, holding your breath, as hooves thunder past, the stench of blood and sweat filling your nose. Time stretches into an eternity until the sound fades and the only thing left is the buzzing of flies. When you finally dare to rise, the scene is worse than any nightmare. Smoke curls from smoldering tents, vultures already circling overhead. The survivors gather slowly, eyes, hollow faces streaked with dust and tears. They whisper names, searching for loved ones who do not answer. The ground is slick, the air thick, and every step feels like walking through the ruins of a dream. You find Peter later pale and shaken, his voice breaking as he prays over the dead. He did not see the battle, but its weight crushes him all the same. The donkey stands nearby, silent, as if it too understands the gravity of what has been lost. The People's Crusade, once a river of hope, lies shattered, its current stilled. That night, you sit among the survivors, staring into a fire that barely warms you. The crackle of burning wood is the only sound in the stillness. You think of the thousands who will never see Jerusalem, who will never even see the dawn. The stars above are sharp and cruel, shining down on a field of ghosts. You whisper a prayer, though you no longer know if anyone is listening. As sleep finally drags you under the faces of the fallen, march through your dreams, silent and unending, and you wonder if they will ever let you go. The days after Civetot feel like walking through a fog of ashes. You move among the few who survived each step, heavy each breath, laced with the scent of death that lingers no matter how far you travel. The once vast host is reduced to a scattered handful of ragged souls, their banners torn, their faith bruised but not entirely extinguished. You walk quietly, hearing only the crunch of dry earth underfoot and the occasional sob stifled into a sleeve. Every face around you wears the same hollow expression, the same unspoken question: why are we still alive when so many are not? The Byzantines send ships to rescue the survivors, ferrying you back across the Bosporus to safety. The journey across the water feels unreal, the sea flat and endless, the horizon empty. You sit on the deck, staring at your reflection in the rippling waves, seeing not just your face, but the ghosts of those who drowned in blood and dust. The ship creaks softly and the wind cools your sunburned skin, but inside the fire of fear still smoulders. Back in Byzantine territory, Emperor Alexios listens to the pitiful accounts of the disaster. He offers some food, some shelter, but no illusions. To him, this failed crusade is proof of what happens when Zeal charges ahead without order. He sends word to the West, a message that will ripple through Europe. The People's Crusade is no more, but the need for a real army, disciplined, armored, led by nobles, has never been clearer. You stand at the edge of the city, listening to the whispers of this news being carried by merchants and messengers alike. The tragedy of Civetot does not kill the dream of Jerusalem. It sharpens it, fuels it with the bitter memory of what blind faith alone cannot achieve. Historians still argue over the meaning of the People's Crusade. Was it a heroic outpouring of faith by ordinary people, or a reckless blunder that cost thousands their lives? You think of the faces you saw along the road, the farmer who sold his land, the mother who sang to her child under the stars, the young man who boasted of slaying Turks but never made it past the first arrow. They were not heroes or fools, they were simply people pulled by a dream too big to hold. In the quiet of the nights that follow, stories spread among the survivors. They speak of martyrdom, of the innocent who died for Christ, of miracles unseen by the living. These tales grow and twist, becoming legends that will soon reach the ears of those preparing for the official crusade. You know that the knights and nobles gathering in the West will hear these stories and vow to succeed where the common folk failed. They will march east armed, not only with swords, but also with the memory of Civetot's dead, their ghosts pushing them forward. In time, the survivors scatter, some returning home, others lingering in Byzantine lands, too broken to go back. Peter the Hermit disappears into history's mist, his voice fading, though his legend remains. You find yourself standing once more on the shore, watching ships sail toward distant horizons, wondering if you will ever see Jerusalem, or if it will remain forever out of reach. The wind softens and you let it wash over you, carrying away the smell of smoke, if only for a moment. The sky above is wide and blue, and the sun warms your face as if to say, life goes on even after the darkest of nights. You breathe deeply, allowing the warmth to settle into your bones, and for the first time in many days, you feel a fragile peace. The People's Crusade has ended, but its echoes ripple outward, whispering to the armies soon to come. Those echoes are yours to remember, carried on the wind like a song too sad to forget and too powerful to ignore. Now, as the sun sinks low and the sky turns gold, you close your eyes, letting the world blur and soften. The road ahead is no longer yours to walk, but for tonight you can rest, knowing you have reached the end of this path. The firelight dims, the voices fade, and the stars begin to spill across the sky like a scattering of diamonds. You feel your breathing slow, each inhale deeper, each exhale softer. The ghosts of the road drift away into the dark, leaving only calm. Imagine the cool night air brushing against your skin, the sound of gentle waves lapping at the shore, and the distant hum of a city settling into sleep. You are safe now. There is no rush, no fear, only the steady rhythm of your heart syncing with the quiet around you. Let your thoughts wander like clouds, light and unhurried, drifting wherever they please. The memories of battles of loss of harsh roads fade into the background, becoming nothing more than whispers. You are here, wrapped in the stillness, and the weight on your shoulders lifts little by little. The stars above seem closer, their light softer, as though they have bent down just to watch over you. The night holds you, gently cradling you like the earth itself has become a blanket. Your eyes grow heavy, and the world slips into a hush. The story has ended, but its echoes will wait for you quietly like old friends. Rest now, the journey is done, sweet dreams.